Hello, I'm Dan Fell, Chief Exec of Doncaster Chamber, and it's my pleasure to introduce this episode of the Knowledge and Skills Cast. Delivered by the South Yorkshire Chambers of Commerce, this podcast is a continuation of much of the thinking, research and insight that went into the production of our local skills improvement plan. Like that groundbreaking document, we'll be looking at what needs to be done to help our region maximise its potential when it comes to workforce and talent, while also helping you get to grips with the big changes that are happening in relation to skills across Doncaster, Sheffield, Barnsley and Rotherham. Each episode we will be hearing from leading experts and industrious South Yorkshire organisations who have really made a name for themselves in this space, whether that's through their innovative HR practices, smart recruitment tactics, or progressive attitudes towards people development. Spanning a wide range of different industries, these professionals will be sharing their experiences, the challenges they've overcome, and the winning strategies that have made them such success stories. So whether you're just starting up in business and looking for fresh insights or are simply curious to go behind the scenes of some well-known local employers, there's bound to be something here in the Knowledge and Skills Cast that grabs your attention. Get ready to be inspired as we shine a spotlight on leading regional businesses and the skills revolution happening here in South Yorkshire.
Welcome to our fourth Knowledge and Skills Cast. I'm Nikki Jones from the University of Sheffield's AMRC Training Centre, and today we will be focusing on business and professional services industries. I'm thrilled to be joined by two wonderful and very experienced individuals from this sector. Hayley Kay, founder and board member of Crystal Clean Service and founder of iekos consultancy, and Louise Turner, director at Actus Risk Management. Thank you both for joining me today. I am absolutely quite excited about speaking to you today. I'm really excited, so thank you. I think today is going to be really interesting because not only have you had this wonderful business and opportunities yourselves, but you work with a broad range of sectors, a broad range of companies. So I think you'll be able to answer some wonderful kind of questions today from your own opinion in your own businesses, but also from the businesses you work with across a wide range of sectors. So I'm really excited to have you here today. So thank you very much. So I'm just going to start us off by asking you to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your business and about your own role within it. So I'll come to Hayley first.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for having me. So, as you said, I am a founder of Crystal Clean, which is a commercial cleaning service company. I started that almost 17 years ago, and we specialise in working with engineering, manufacturing and production companies, as well as your traditional cleaning services, offices, schools and business centres and things like that. I've been in business for quite some time. About 8 years ago, I started my own consultancy practice, which is where I basically go into small companies, helping them to look at ways that they can improve and grow their business and basically get it to work more for them rather than against them.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Over to you then, Louise.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm Louise Turner. I work within the Actus Group. So as group companies, we look after corporate insurance. And I head up the risk management division. So within that, we do HR consultancy and health and safety. I've always done HR consultancy all my career. It's always been third-party consultancy, so going into lots of different organisations and giving them HR advice where they don't have their internal resources. And that comes with lots of different challenges, going into lots of different businesses, but also a real wealth of experience working with some amazing companies across lots of different sectors.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask my next question now. We're focusing on skills. I'm from education, as you know, but and skills is really important. But it's really, I'm really looking at today at how we recruit people, how important training is in that, and the success that training being high up on somebody's priority, and how that impacts on the success of a business. Because I obviously believe in education and skills, but it's really at the forefront now, and I think that I'm really interested to hear what are your thoughts on that. So to start off with, then, describe how your business approaches people development and training, and what makes it stand out from the crowd in this area. So I'll come back to you, Hayley, if that's okay.
Yeah, so from a cleaning perspective, we recruit all sorts of people from different backgrounds and different levels of ability. So we have our own internal training program where we sort of train them and educate them on how best to deliver our services. And that comes with all sorts of, tools and techniques. And we try to train and educate our people depending on how they actually learn, because everybody has got a different learning style. And some people, some of our staff have learning difficulties. So giving them a book to read or, an assignment to read wouldn't necessarily be of use to them. They might really struggle with that. So we have 3 different ways that we can train our staff so that they all are trained to the same standard, but in a way that they can absorb and understand that information. And that comes from years ago, there used to be an NVQ in cleaning and support services, which I actually took. And that was a really useful experience for me to learn a different way of training. Because it was very practical, there was a lot of writing, which I personally quite enjoyed. But there was different ways of doing that course, and that's something that I took from that. And that's how we sort of help our cleaners to make sure that they're all trained to the same level. But then, of course, when it comes to sort of higher up the team, leadership and development training and things like that, we actively encourage our staff to take part in training courses. But again, it's also got to come from them and how engaged they are. So yeah, different courses for different people, depending on what it is they want to do and again, what their abilities are.
I love that. That's kind of how we do things in education, is how do people learn best?
Yeah.
And you're right, that kind of, thankfully, the tick box days have gone, and where everybody had a portfolio, an MVQ portfolio that was about 3 folders big, and was just lots of tick boxes as to, and I don't want to run the whole system down, but it felt like that. And I remember having people on MVQs. So I'm glad we moved away from that. I'm glad we moved away from that. But it did help lots of people to start on their training journey, and that was quite important.
I am in a way glad we've sort of come away from that. But the one thing I did find really useful about the NVQ system was that as a business owner, you could go through the criteria, and the criteria is extensive, no matter what course you choose. Yes. But you could actually select the criteria that you wanted to complete and make it relevant to that individual business. So with the I know apprenticeships run quite similarly now when they've got assignments and criteria. You can pick specific areas that you think, well, actually, that's going to be more relevant to our industry or our business or how we operate. And that's the thing that I do like about the sort of the practical NVQs and the apprenticeships and the T-level courses, is the fact that you can adapt it a little bit.
And I think we've got the best part of the old NVQ system, which is the benefits of training on the job and learning, and that practical criteria, working your way through that and building that portfolio. So I think we've got the best part left of the NVQ. We started off with this kind of, it was just lots of bits of paper, and I wasn't sure where it was going. And now it feels like we've got the best part of the vocational education system, which is fantastic for students and employers. Thank you. So Louise, over to you then. So same question. Describe how your business approaches people development and training, and what makes it stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably no surprise that whether it's from an insurance sector or a HR sector, technical training is a huge part of career development. There's no getting away from it. We have to do these technical training courses, which are great. Both CIPD and the CII really support those and are great institutes to be part of. I think probably what makes us different is that we have a real focus on the person, not just technical skills. So we really want to develop people in terms of their soft skills, their ability to network. We are a customer service based business. It's so important that employees and staff know how to interact with people and feel confident in situations to talk about the industry they're in. So I think probably what makes us stand out is that we invest in the whole person, not just technical skills, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, we spend a lot of time now. So so I deal with a lot of all apprenticeships and in engineering. And that whole person development is really key for us. Many of my employers say, yes, we want the technical skills. We want the high level technical skills. However, just as importantly, or sometimes more importantly, is that kind of the whole person, the soft skills, and they're not, they're absolutely critical skills, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the values that they develop. You want people to have the right values in an organisation, to care about what they do,
Absolutely.
to feel valued, but to also put a lot back into the company. And I think that's what some of my employers say has been missing on occasion. And I think it goes right back to schools. You've got to start that in schools, when people are, when they're little druts, and you have to instill those sort of values around what industry want and what they need to be a good citizen as well as a good employee. So I'm loving the answers that you've just given. I mean, it really does. It tells us that those are the sorts of things that will make you stand out in the crowd as employers. So that's brilliant. So I'm going to come back to you, Hayley. So from your perspective, what does the skills landscape currently look like within your industries? Are there any highly sought after skills? Now, you're going to possibly give me a couple of different answers here, which is great. So what does it look like for you now? Are there any skills that people saying, I want, and are you concerned, or are others that talk to you concerned about this kind of supply and demand, or a lack of skills shortages or gaps?
Not so much for me. Obviously, the small businesses that I work with on the consultancy side, there hasn't been anything that's sort of come to fruition of, we're looking for a specific skill set. I think generally just across the board, as you went back to earlier, it's more around the values, getting people to turn up on time, getting people to communicate in the right way. I think the way we communicate now is very different, especially sort of how the youngsters are coming through now that they communicate totally differently to the way we used to back in the day. And not to sound too much like a dinosaur, but once upon a time, if you wanted something, you just used to pick up the phone and ring somebody and say, can you just? Whereas now, I see a lot of people not really wanting to pick up the phone and have a conversation. They say, I'll send them an email, I'll send them a text, and I'll chat.
Coming in from everywhere now on the conversation face to face.
So maybe I need some skills. Maybe I need some more technical skills. But no, I don't see anything specific in terms of that, because a lot of my clients are small businesses that are just sort of in the growth phase. And again, typically they're service-led businesses. So they're looking more for those soft skills, as we talked about earlier, just having that ability to have those values and be where you need to be.
Which is hard, isn't it? If you just come out of school, it's really it's really difficult. You're not there. You're not. No. You're not. Even if you had a Saturday job and things like that, you're just young, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've got a lot to learn and a lot to develop. So I don't think that we have to have a bit of patience with. We're maybe expecting sometimes too much from some of our students, and I also think that we kind of sometimes we look at what we see there. If they're confident and they can speak, and we think that that's what we're looking for, when in actual fact, I've seen some of my students that maybe aren't as confident speaking, but they're absolutely brilliant, and what they bring to an organisation is phenomenal. So I think it's about looking underneath some of that and finding ways of, which I think we'll talk about a bit after, finding ways to test and bring that out when we're speaking to these people.
We've always had the ethos as well, where going back to the cleaning business, where we recruit based on people, on the person, because it's a phrase that I often used to use, is I can teach anybody how to clean in a safer, and organised fashion, following the colour coding and all the rest of it. But I can't teach them to be polite and courteous, and I can't teach people to, turn up and be where they need to be on time and follow, the basic expectations that we require as an organisation. So we often, when we are recruiting, and still to this day, they look for the person, and then they teach them the skills. And I think that is what a lot of small businesses tend to do. It's just the way it is.
I think it kind of follows on from what we were saying. You're on about developing that whole person, that holistic person. So Same question, Louise. So from your perspective, what does the skills landscape currently look like? And are you seeing any high sought after skills, or is there a short supply in certain skills?
Yeah, I mean, in HR, I'm really lucky. HR is incredibly popular. You know, people management, learning and development, HR generalist. We don't have a skill shortage. We've got lots of amazing talent out there. I think more generally, working with some of the clients that I work with, I think there is a huge skills gap, or there certainly will be in the future. It's looking at how we can encourage the next generation to want to be the HGV drivers, the bus drivers, the mechanical engineers, the jobs that are cold and mucky sometimes, and long hours, and they're not easy jobs to do, and they are real vocations, and you've really got to want to go into them. So how do we attract that next generation into those industries? Because I don't think it's going to happen naturally. People aren't coming out of school thinking, I want to be the next HGV driver or bus driver or engineer. So how do we make it? How do we get those skills out there and let them know what's available in the industry? And how do we make it appealing?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got the answers to everything. I wish I did. But you're right, and I think that we look at how we work with schools very differently now. And I got a skills engagement person that really builds strong relationships with schools, not just turn up with a stand and say, come and do an apprenticeship with us, but really builds a deep relationship with the schools. Because teachers aren't going to know about engineering if they've gone to university, they've done a degree in whatever, and then they've done an education, they've gone straight into teaching. Why would I expect them to know about manufacturing or driving a HGV? Or, there is a part in my view to play from training providers where we've got to build those strong relationships with schools. So teachers can talk confidently. We have a kind of open and transparent relationship where we can go into these places. We could take employers into the schools to really get to understand what the opportunities are, because I don't think people know what the salaries are. I think what the benefits are of working for that company. They perhaps don't understand what the job entails. So they look at it and go, that's dirty and cold, I won't do it. But they're not seeing the whole there. So I think there's a job to do. So following on from that then, with the context, so now we've established the context. So how do you think the industry has advanced in recent years? Is that down to new technologies, AI, social platforms, etc.? So I guess talk about your kind of broad, general understanding. So I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed massively. I mean, I've been in business now for nearly 17 years and, we didn't have half of the stuff that we've got now in terms of technology. We didn't even have a website because unless you'd got a degree in Dreamweaver or whatever it was back then, you couldn't have one and you just couldn't afford it because it was so expensive. So, whereas now you've got so much technology at your fingertips, and I think it is really important. And I think having people with the ability to use and navigate this technology is amazing, and that's a skill in itself. But the amount of automation tools that are out there now, and systems, and I learned about Zaps yesterday, which is such a kind of blown my mind, and it's like a thing called Zapier, I think it's called, and just how much of your business and an organisation you can systemize and automate, and it is fascinating to me, and I think that is the way that a lot of businesses need to move now. But you're still going to need somebody with that technical ability to understand how that technology works and how to integrate it, and how to utilize it to make your business as efficient and as effective as possible. And I am seeing a lot more of those tools being brought in now, and AI and all this other thing. And whilst it's a little bit scary, it's fascinating to see, and I do think it's going to completely change the landscape for a lot of organisations. And there's going to be careers in 10 years' time that we don't even know exist yet.
That's great, because you're trying to plan a curriculum that doesn't even, the jobs doesn't even exist yet. It is, but we just keep going, and I keep talking to people and taking advice. So same question, Louise, over here.
Yeah, it's interesting in HR because, I mean, obviously, you know, the developments in technology have made people management a lot easier. You know, gone are the days when we've got a filing cabinet in the office with 15 million different personnel files in there and they have to sort through them to find that one piece of paper you needed from 5 years ago. You know, it's all online now and it's brilliant. And, you know, employees can sit at home and request a holiday at the touch of a button and off it goes to their manager. There've been some amazing developments. I think it's funny because CIPD, who I'm a member of, they're always encouraging us as HR practitioners to embrace new technology more because I think typically as HR people, lots of us aren't very in touch with technology and we are more people and talking and chatting to each other. So I think there's been huge developments. I think there's probably a lot more that we could make use of and we probably need to catch up in terms of adopting those new technologies.
I would hate to think, though, that we didn't have a person that we could go and talk to. I mean, there's this, I would hope that we would always be in a situation where, you know, it's not just an electronic system and a faceless kind of answer. I would really hope for that. And I think that, you know, from my point of view, our employers tell us that even if they're in very traditional manufacturing settings, they still want students to understand new technologies. And in manufacturing, you know, when you want to make things more efficient and productive and things like that, any technology is becoming just ingrained as part of the DNA of an organization. But you still, there's so many different types of manufacturing, and you still have very traditional and very kind of at the forefront of technology, but all say the same, that they need the technologies, or they at least need people coming in with those technologies. So, you know, one of my degree students has just kind of transformed an area in their workplace through kind of Industry 4 technology, and it's transformed that organisation. They're rolling it out now across a number of factories, and so even people even organisations that were thinking about those technologies before are now saying, well, this is really great. We can see how this works. But it all has to be done with integrity, I think, you know, particularly around AI is the integrity of it. That's, I think, and being well trained and understanding that really well and seeing the benefits is quite exciting, I think.
We obviously work with quite a lot of manufacturing companies in the cleaning industry, and you know, we go in there and some of them have replaced a lot of the traditional manufacturing methods with new machines, and you know, they're amazing, fascinating pieces of kit, but they still need an engineer to come out when the thing fails, you know, or you know, they need somebody to monitor it and somebody to make sure that it's working at optimum performance. They still need us to go around after each day and mop up any oil that's leaked out of the side of the machine or whatever. So I think there is that there will still be needing those skill sets. It's just those skill sets are going to be more around problem solving and you know, looking at it. You're still going to need engineers, but they'll just be engineers that look at different elements. So I still think that there will be a growth of, you know, skills required, but it's just what those skills will look like. So it's quite a fascinating.
It is, and I think, you know, there was a fear at some point that, you know, the more automated we became, the less we would need people. But I don't think that's true. I think the skill set might be slightly different, but you're absolutely right. You know, and that, you know, Industry 5 that we're all moving to, you know, that is about how people interact with that and use that technology. So I'm more comfortable in that. Is it personally that, you know, that still involves people, and I think it's quite exciting. It's exciting, but there's a challenge there, isn't there? There is a challenge for us all to try to keep in front of that. Yeah. We always seem to be one step behind, and I haven't got that head, but
because it moves so quickly.
It does move so quickly. I mean, you work with lots of manufacturers, don't you? I mean, do they sort of say the same thing around technology and keep it in front of it? And
yeah, I think it's interesting because you don't know what you don't know. And I think this is actually where our universities have a huge part to play in supporting businesses, because a bit like what you said with one of your students going into a business and revolutionising a part of that, that's what we need to encourage more of, actually, because it's the upcoming generation and the newly trained people who have got the finger on the pulse in terms of new ways of working, and we need to encourage that.
Okay, so I'll come back to you, Hayley. So how do you think we should be preparing the next generation of talent so that it better meets the needs of businesses within industry?
I think there's two ways to look at this. I think when I was at school, I remember filling in a survey, and it was by connections, as it did an assessment based on sort of the things that you enjoyed, and it was almost like a mini personality sort of test. And out of that came a list of jobs that would potentially be something that you might be interested in. And a lot of mine were around management and hospitality management and things like that. And I've ended up going into a management career. There was no mention of being a business owner on there. So maybe we need to encourage that a little bit more. But I think it's educating the youngsters as to what careers look like. And also, I mean, I've been down at Skill Street this morning, which is in New with Jay's, and they were talking about how it's so important to educate the youngsters that, you know, if you're doing something within engineering, for example, this is the reason why you're studying maths and science and, you know, and physics and things like that. And it's because all of these things combined together go into potentially doing something within an engineering field. And I think it's about educating people that actually the reason that we do these subjects is not because you're just following a curriculum and you're not just ticking a box. You need these fundamental skills to be able to then build a career. And I think there's a lot of pressure for youngsters to sort of know everything about what they want to do at such a young age. Whereas most of the people that I know, the careers that they're in now are not probably what they thought they might have been doing when they were at school. Because as you learn and as you develop, you sort of figure out, well, actually, I'm quite interested in that. Or, you know, I've got a keen interest in this type of engineering. And sometimes you have to go backwards a little bit and redo some qualifications before you can move forward again. So I think it's educating the young people about what different types of careers, because, you know, even engineering, it's a really broad topic. There's so many subcategories that fall into engineering. So it's not enough to just say, I want to go in engineering. It's about, well, what type of engineering? You know, you've got electrical, mechanical, you know, there's so many technical, there's so many different types of engineers. And each individual person has got their own value within an organisation. So I think it's about educating people about all of the types of careers, but also making sure that they're doing something that, A, they enjoy and that they can naturally grow into and they can develop over time, because personal development is really important. And that can look like a number of different things, can't it? So yeah, I think there's a whole education piece to do for the youngsters, but also to the parents as well, because parents need to make sure that they're telling their children what types of careers are out there. And I think Skill Street is going to be transformational.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I've been kind of involved in discussions from the very beginning, and I speak to James very often. It is quite exciting, and it goes back to our earlier kind of point around. You need to get to young students in school or pupils in school and start to educate them in what's available. But oh my gosh, I've changed my mind so many times since I was 16. You know, it is hard. They have to make some tough decisions, and there's an expectation. I can't ever remember it. I can remember the expectation that I had to choose a career. I can't remember an expectation of staying in that career for life, right? I can't remember being pushed that much. But then, you know, I'm also, my memory's going as well.
I also think that young people aspire to be like the people around them. Yeah. So my son, for example, does want to go into engineering, but my dad is a mechanical engineer by trade, so he's got somebody to...
It's in his DNA, isn't it? It's there, isn't it? And he's heard about it, and I do think that's...
So, you know, my dad talks to him about, you know, what engineering is and what the things that they build together and everything else. But because my son's got that inspiration, he is open to the fact that that could potentially be a possibility for him. Whereas some youngsters don't have positive role models around there that have got different careers and have chosen different paths. So I think it's about educating those people as well, and those youngsters, to say, actually, you can be anything that you want to be, so long as you work at it and you put the time and the effort in, and that you focus at school and everything else. And I think it's about opening up those opportunities to everybody, to let them know what kind of careers are out there.
Yeah. And whatever they're learning, it's not a waste of time, because it's the transferable skills that come from that, and then those softer skills, those personal skills that they're developing. So same question to you then, Louise. So how do you think we should be preparing the next generation of talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come a long way, actually, in terms of when I left school, it was you went to university or you got a job.
Yeah.
And there was no other route. And I'm really proud now that there's so many great apprenticeships, there's high level apprenticeships, there's the new T levels. They are amazing routes into employment, which benefit the employer as well as the employee, because you don't have to be academic, you don't have to want to sit behind a desk and do your A-levels or go on to university. There's lots of ways you can create an amazing career now. So I think we've come a long way. I think what I'm saddened that isn't promoted more now is work experience within schools. I know some schools still do it, but lots of schools don't put time into that now. I mean, I get that, because at the end of the day, it's about academic achievement and they're really tight for time. But, I'll give you my example. I only ever wanted to be a primary school teacher. That's all I ever wanted to be until I did 2 weeks work experience at school. And oh my goodness, that changed my mind. So actually, that work experience for 2 weeks transformed my entire life, because I realised that actually I could have gone down that route through university, qualified, gone into school, and then thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? So for me, it was hugely beneficial. And, it looks good on a CV in the sense that at least when you're interviewing somebody straight out of school, you can talk about that experience and what that looked like for them. So I would like that to be encouraged more at schools. But I think it goes back to the point you made. It's about almost helping teachers help students understand what options there are out there. I attended an event in a school where I was invited to come in and talk about my career. So I sat with all these wonderful students and I said, right, I do HR. Does anybody know what that is? And not one person did. And they only ever wanted to visit the sports people or what they knew. It was just because they knew that. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think it's about getting that message out there. And I think we as businesses have got a part to play in that, because in the room that I was in, where I was invited to come and talk about my career, most of the people in the room were from colleges, universities, the local sports centres. There weren't that many private sector businesses within the room to talk about their industry. So I think we need to push ourselves a little bit more and say, yeah, we're here, we're free, we'll come and talk to your students about it. And I think that would help to educate in terms of what's available.
I mean, lots of the programs now. So when you're looking at T levels and apprenticeships and things like that, then the workplace element is critical in those things. We have a lot of employers. So speaking personally, but even my colleagues across other educational organisations, there are a lot of employers give their time free for work placements. Schools are asking. So we ask a lot of our employers. But it is a skills system, isn't it? We do need to work together, but we need employers to commit to giving those placements. And we need to be able to support employers to give those, because they are critical things, those work placements. What do you think the barriers are? This is a bit left field now, but what do you think the barriers are for employers? Or to you, Hay? What do you think the barriers are to employers giving opportunities for work placements?
For me, I think for a lot of small businesses, it's the time element.
Yeah.
So, for example, we once had an apprentice that came to work for us. I'm going back a long time ago. And we'd massively underestimated the amount of time that we were going to need to spend with that individual.
Yeah.
Because obviously, you have to train them in every single element of what it is you need them to do. And then they disappear off for a day to do, the college work, and then they come back with a whole load more questions that you're not prepared for. And it's for us, the apprenticeship wasn't adaptable enough to meet what we did as a business, because as a small business owner, traditionally, you might come in to do admin, but you might chip in with other areas of the business as well. So you might end up doing a little bit of social media, or you might end up, having to empty the bins on a Friday night if they've not got an office cleaner and things like that. So they're not as versatile. Whereas in a larger organisation, if you come in to do an administration apprenticeship, the chances are you're going to be sat at a desk 5 days a week doing admin apprenticeship, admin work. So I think for small businesses, and one of the barriers is the amount of time. And often they'll say an apprentice hasn't worked out for them, but it's not necessarily the apprentice's fault. It's because they haven't had the time or the ability to give that apprentice what they need in order to succeed in that role. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So I think that larger organisations do have that time and that ability to spend with that person. So I think it's about making sure if they are going to do an apprentice, for example, they have to have that time. And I think that's one of the barriers that we certainly experience. And I know some of my small business clients have experienced.
Really good to know. Well, what about you, Louise? Do you think that this kind of work placement or apprenticeships are school work placements? Yeah, I think in terms of the school placements, I think sometimes the barrier working in either HR, insurance, or some of my clients is that you end up getting a work placement student because they've got nowhere else to go. Not necessarily because they're really bothered about learning your industry. It's just that they need to go somewhere for 2 weeks. So you're a good option because you've got somewhere available. So I think if you work in a sector where people are really keen to go into it and are desperate to learn those skills, I think you've got no problem. You've got a really enthusiastic person for 2 weeks that absolutely wants to learn. It can sometimes be a bit more challenging in our industry because we're trying to encourage that enthusiasm to something that they've probably not even heard of before, never mind aspiring to work in. But that said, I would never say no because, that person might go away thinking, oh, actually, that's the career for me. And we have had people come and join us where we've been and spoken in school with them, and they've then contacted us afterwards.
And I was just going to ask, actually, because an apprenticeship is a big commitment.
Absolutely.
A week's worth of, or 2 weeks worth of work placement is slightly different, but might change their minds completely, as it did with you. I have to be in 2 weeks in a school. Just kind of how I'm the other end where somebody will pick up the phone to me and say, do you know any of your employers that will take on a work placement? So, and I'm just wondering, are we clear enough as a training provider? Are we clear enough when we are asking employers to take on not an apprentice, but a work placement in school? Do we give clear guidance so that you know exactly what we're trying to get out of that placement?
Possibly not. We've never done work experience purely because obviously a lot of our work is based on site.
Yes.
We've got to jump through a lot of hoops to be
the safety kind of aspect to it, yeah.
We've got to do a lot to accommodate, a young 15, 16-year-old or even younger to be on site like that because it's such a guarded and all. So, yeah. Whereas if they were going to come and sit in the office for 2 weeks and, do administration or a bit of marketing or whatever, and then yeah, we probably would be able to accommodate that. And we could do it whereby they worked with a different person each day. So they got a different feel for, one day they might work with the administrator, another day they might work with, myself going out, another time they might come to networking. So I think if there's more time to plan ahead for stuff like that, I think the one time we have been asked for work experience, it was like the week before. And I'm like, I can't change my entire diary and I can't accommodate that person for those full 2 weeks because at the time we didn't have enough team members. Whereas now we would just need the ability to sort of have that flexibility and enough time and not the week before, so to speak. So I think sometimes instructions could be clearer, but also that the time frame to get things in place and the would be better. Yeah.
So would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think often these things are organised at the last minute, aren't they? So forewarning would be a real benefit. I mean, in terms of apprentices, that is a huge part of the model of our business.
Yes.
We take on apprentices, and as soon as that apprentice has got to the stage where they're starting to get at a higher level, we take on the next apprentice. Even if probably as a business we don't need that next person, we're looking ahead to think, well, when they get to that level, we will need them. Yeah. So actually we'll start now when we accept that, there's going to be a period where they're shadowing somebody or doing things that perhaps the others aren't doing, and it's worked amazingly for us. And certainly for, some of my clients, again, I go back to when I finished school, it was you did your A-levels, you did your degree, or you just got a job. Whereas actually now, it's amazing. There are so many apprenticeships out there in just every sector you can imagine, which is great, because if being in the school setting is not for you, then there are so many opportunities out there. And I think, lots of businesses have really, really adopted apprentices and the apprenticeship program, and they'll run with it. And others probably don't know enough about it to really invest in it at this stage. So again, I think it's about educating businesses to understand what it means, what funding's available, how much support they're going to need, because apprentices do need a huge amount of support, and then at least they can make a decision based on all the information.
Yeah, I mean, apprentices they do so much for an organisation. It is hard work. You do have to put a lot in, and it can be really difficult if you're a small business and you haven't got all the different kind of, you haven't got a HR function and you haven't got a marketing function, but when you can do it as an organisation, those apprentices will give back so much, and they can impact. I mean, as I said, I've given you one story. When another kind of story is where, an employer has been able to take on hundreds of £1,000s worth of contracts because one of my apprentices has developed a new part for a production line, and you just think, oh my gosh, that's transformational. And all the investment that employer's given, that apprentice has given back tenfold, because they've made hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of either new business, efficiencies, time savings, productivity. So when we're now marketing ourselves, we market through case studies. So we talk about, this is what this student did, this is what that student did. And I find that the employers really buy into that. Okay, then. So I explain a little bit about the apprenticeship, what that apprentice has done. I find that a really good way to get those stories out to employers. But there's a lot more that we can do.
I think we need to have a bit of a change of mindset as well, because when we talk about apprentices, I think we automatically think about the younger new generation coming through, and that's absolutely not what it needs to be. Yeah, particularly the new higher level apprenticeships. I've got some managers that within clients I work for that have been managers a long, long time, but have never done a formal qualification. Well, these are amazing.
And they're doing level 7.
Yeah, they do level 7 apprenticeship. That's not taken away from the job they're doing. It's just underpinning the amazing experience they've got with some technical knowledge, which just enhances their role even further. And again, I think as businesses, we should be looking for those opportunities more, because I think so often we expect to reach a level in our career and then we never get any more training. We never develop any further past that point, because you're at a manager level and therefore you're all right. But actually that continued learning and that continued development, keeping up with times and changes in the industry, is really powerful. And it really helps with the retention, Absolutely. I think as human beings, we always want to better ourselves. And if you're happy and engaged and learning in an organisation, you're more likely going to stay there, because you can see not only that they're paying you, but they're investing in you as a person. And that's so powerful for retention.
Absolutely. So it's an earlier conversation we had before we came on today. So companies that have training as part of their DNA at whatever age. My oldest apprentice is I think 49 at the moment. Been in industry for years, needed to upskill and change a little bit the kind of focus of where they were at. So we have all ages, but trained companies that kind of have training as part of their DNA versus companies that don't do any training and continuous development. Can you see a difference in those organisations?
Yeah, certainly in terms of staff engagement and retention, because I think you can talk about all sorts of different theories, management theories in this world, but when you look at what motivates somebody, pay and security and all of those things are the fundamentals, the what we expect. Yeah. But that extra over and above, what makes me important to you as an employee is so powerful. You know, how are you investing in me? How are you looking after my well-being and my development? And I think that's what makes people stand out, organisations stand out from the crowd, is what does my future career with you look like? And that's not just, well, you might get a pay rise after 6 months. It's we're going to continually develop you. And that's really powerful, I think. Do you say the same?
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, educating people what those next steps are. So we have clear sort of job roles within our cleaning company, for example. Obviously, a lot of people come in at entry level, to do a basic cleaning job, but many of our cleaners have either used us as a stepping stone to better themselves and then gone on to do something else in a different field. Or they've stayed with us and actually worked their way up to becoming, a team leader, an area manager. And, the lady that used to do all of our admin is now our general manager, as he's going to become a shareholder of the business.
And that's agreed. And that's just fantastic.
But I think as well, it's we're an extremely flexible organisation, so we offer a lot of packages that sort of work around their personal situation. So a lot of our cleaning staff and even area managers are parents, or they are carers, or they are dealing with some other situation outside of work. So sometimes they actually just come to work for a break. And so it's really important for us to give them that freedom to just come to work, put everything else, behind them. We just come to work and be themselves. But then also say, what, actually, you're really good in this area. We think we might be able to help you, or, give you an opportunity. We give all of our staff, regardless of where they are in the business, opportunity to go on extra training courses, whether those be practical or, more technical. And a lot of them do engage with that. And I think it is really important, regardless of what it is you do as a career, to have those opportunities given to you, because that's how you, like you say, get people more invested, but also better your workforce, better your organisation.
You're valued, and I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Louise, with your background in HR, do you think things have changed over the years in terms of what people expect from an employer now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm looking now where businesses are having to show not only, the what holidays do I get, what pay do I get, what pension do I get. They want to know, how are you going to look after my well-being? What are your well-being initiatives? Do we have gym, in our organisation, we provide gym membership because that's what's important to staff. Do you get free parking? It's things like that. But not only is it, how are you going to look after my well-being? It's, what's your CSR policy?
I'm asked that because sustainability clause, yeah.
What impact are we having on the environment? How are we looking after the environment? What are your key cultures in terms of that? And I think lots of businesses are on the back foot with this. And, all of a sudden as HR practitioners, we're having to think, right, okay, not only do we have to talk about our culture and our corporate values, but how are we going to demonstrate these things? How are we going to attract that next generation in? Because that's what's important to them. Well-being is such a huge focus for lots of people now, and rightly so.
I think there's a course coming on here. Don't want some training or something where, I imagine being a small business, or any business, and thinking, how do I make sure that I'm ticking all those right boxes for recruiting staff, and that changing I can never remember asking any employer what their sustainability, their policy on well-being or sustainability was. It wasn't that it wasn't important to me. I just never felt that I could ask those questions. So it is. It's completely changed. Did you find the same?
Well, we're seeing a lot more people now that are coming in to us, and to any company that they're going to work for, and they have done extensive research on the business that they're potentially interviewing with, through from the packages, as Louise has already said, but also down to who we are, what we stand for as individuals and as an organisation, and like Louise has already said, our sustainability policies and everything else. And I had a guy come for an interview the other week, and he was talking to me as if he knew me, and I was like, oh, okay. And it's because he'd done so much research on me as an individual. Obviously, I own the business. It's me that sort of heads everything up. So in a way, it was quite It was quite admirable because clearly he used your research and he was clearly enthused about working for the organisation, but at the same time think, oh, crikey, he knows more about me than I do. But I think that's, again, another example of how we've moved over the last 10, 15 years of that our information, our profiles are out there for people to read and they can quickly determine whether they think they're aligned with that individual or not, just based on what they see online and on social media and the things that you do. So, I think it is a completely different world now to what it was. But in some ways, it's a good thing, I think.
I think, yeah. I mean, we're having a bit of a giggle, but actually, underneath all that, it is really important. I just would have been too nervous. I always felt, as an individual going for a job, that they were doing me a favour by giving me a job. I never thought or had maybe enough value in myself to think that I was going to be giving them as much back. And it's a silly thing, really. I'm an educated woman, but I just always felt the dynamic was slightly different. I'm talking personally now, my personal experience as a young person, which is a long, long, long time ago. But it feels a more balanced, I'm always impressed when people ask about me as what are your values, Nikki? What's important to you? What's important to the organisation? And now that they've done the research, I'm always impressed by that, but never had the confidence to do that many, many years ago. I don't know, you're not as old as me, so you're a past the... Yeah,
I think when it comes to the bats, I would agree. It used to be that people would, come to the job and you were doing them the favour, and they were very thankful to have those opportunities to work for an organisation. Whereas I do feel it has flipped on its head to a degree, and in some cases it's a good thing actually, because it is holding businesses to account, and they do need to put a bit more effort into making sure that employees feel valued, which personally I think they should have been doing that anyway.
Yeah,
but not all the companies were, and as a result they don't have a good retention rate. But I think a lot of that has changed since COVID. Everybody's working practices changed overnight. Everybody had to become more flexible. Everybody had to become more adaptable and embrace technology, embrace home working. Well, we didn't have a choice of that, but it's continued, hasn't it? So I do think that whilst there are lots of conversations that still happen around sort of COVID and in lockdowns and everything else, I do think that it has changed the landscape of employment, and it has made people stop and think, well, what is important to me? What is important to my family? And it has made work a lot more flexible. I know for me, we completely changed our household because both of us were self-employed. We had no childcare. At the time, we had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So juggling that and trying to run a business and look after all of our employees in our individual organisations was tough. So we had to adapt the way that we worked. And a lot of that still continued. Regularly I will finish at sort of 2:30, 3 o'clock, go and pick up the children from school, do the children's activities, and then I'll pick my laptop back up at 8 o'clock at night when they're in bed, and I'll do 2 or 3 hours worth of work if it needs to be done. But, before, a lot of people's mentality was, it's a 9 to 5 and that's it. Whereas I think people are more flexible now, and employers are a lot more flexible. And I think that's a good thing, because it means that people can be there to pick up the kids from school, or they can be there to, go to the Christmas performances that are pinging up all the time at the minute. And I think it's good that people have got that flexibility, and I think it's important that employers embrace that and have that. I mean, it's not always possible. I get some companies have strict timeframes where they've got to be in work, and I understand that as well. So I think it's definitely a different landscape now than what it was, say, 5 or 6 years ago.
And when we looked at skills, that's great, because what that's allowing is skill sets that might previously have left employment, stay in employment, or stay in it for longer. Whereas they might have previously thought, well, I'll retire. They're now thinking, well, I've got that flexibility to work from home, work shorter hours, it allows skills to stay in the industry for longer. And I think that is so important when undoubtedly in some areas we're going to have a skills shortage.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm all for that kind of equal status, really, around employer-employee. I need to invest in you, and you need to invest in us. And it can't be all one way, or it has to be a real commitment on both sides. But I do think I've seen a complete change. Being absolutely right. Keeping skill sets in industry by being a bit more flexible is kind of a no-brainer, really, isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you if you could? On that then, on the skills system, if you could change anything about the region's skills system as it stands today, what would it be, Hayley?
I think I've already mentioned that. I think it's about educating people and making sure that, everybody knows, especially the young people, know what is out there and what the careers look like in all elements. And making sure that businesses are educated as well in how they can support that and seeing that transition through.
Maybe Elise?
I think for me, and I'm nervous about saying this with you in the room, because in case you correct me, but don't take offence. Say what you like. But I think it's about the people who are coming out of our universities, getting them to stay here and not to go back to where, Sheffield is an amazing place which people come to for university, but it's how do we celebrate our region so that then people think, I want to stay here now. They got great career opportunities, great social development opportunities. This is the place I want to stay. So I think it's just about how do we celebrate ourselves more, because there are great opportunities out there, and we want our amazing graduates who are coming out of our universities to stay here and then go into our industries.
South Yorkshire, and I've moved around a bit over the years, and obviously with this accent, we're definitely not from South Yorkshire. I've been here 14 years, but it's the most amazing place, It's the most amazing place with the most amazing people. And I've never felt as at home as I do in South Yorkshire. And the employers are just kind of, they're amazing. World class. Really bought into training and education. Really proud of where they, what they're doing and this region. Just to kind of give you a bit of some information about the employees I work with. We know that if you do an apprenticeship, and I can only speak for my employers in this, but we know that our students, when they finish their apprenticeship, stay in the region. And they stay in the region, one of the reasons, because in some cases that they will go back to the, all parts of the world, and that we're always planning to do that. And that's okay as well. But if they're from the region, what we find in the apprentices is that because they've been with their employer a long time, they'll stay because they get their second job. They get their second promotion here. So it's not just the first job out to university. They get a second and third. They bought a house. They bought a car. They're involved with somebody and they have a child. So they've really wedded themselves to the region. So I would sell apprenticeships, right? But they are amazing, and you do see people when they've gone through an apprenticeship route are more likely to stay in the region. Somebody's going to phone in or somebody's going to say at some point that's not true. But it's true when I'm talking about my apprentices at the AMRC Training Centre. So apprenticeships all the way for me. That's what I think. Okay, so I'm moving on now. What's the plan for your business, Hayley, over the coming 2 to 5 years? What is the role of training and development in achieving those aims?
So the plan for the cleaning business, long term, I would really like to turn it into an EOT, so an employee-owned trust. The logistics, the logistics of how that's going to happen, we haven't sort of differentiated yet. We're still sort of fairly new in that process. Because for me, in our industry, if we were to sell the business, any other company would come along and they would strip out all the people that make it valuable, in my opinion, and they would just be buying the contracts and the cleaners, whereas actually, the senior leadership team have helped me to develop the company to what it is today. So for me, it's important to be able to give that back. So we are at the very beginnings of exploring what that would look like. And then sort of obviously continuing to grow and develop as we do. And again, we give opportunity for anybody within the organisation to train and develop. But we also do every now and again have somebody that'll come forward and go, I could really do with a bit of training on this. Oh gosh, right, and now I've got to go and find a course on this or something. Well, often, it's good that they feel that they can come and ask for that. I had somebody the other day saying, I want some training in HR, and I was like, really? Oh, okay. Where do we go? It'll add up to my back pocket. Absolutely. But it's good that they feel that they can come and ask for that, and that, it's because they feel that having that little bit of training would better equip them to do their job. And I think that's really valuable in that they've identified that they could do with a little bit more support in those areas. And we are all about supporting our organisation. And then, continuing to develop the consultancy practice, to work with as many small businesses as I possibly can to help them and obviously educate them on all the things that are out there. Because as a region, as we've already said, we are an amazing region, and there are so many resources that small businesses can tap into. I think there is a whole education piece that needs to be done around what is there. And that can be anything from the grants that are available, the skills that are available, the training, and, even things around, like Louise said earlier, apprenticeships are not just for 16-year-olds fresh out of school. They're for, all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, and sometimes it can be just an add-on to something that they're already doing. So I think there is a whole education piece for business owners around all the things that are available to them that they can tap into, which is, something that I plan to sort of work on during my presidency here at the Chamber.
Okay, so thank you, Hayley. Over to you then, Louise. So what's the plans for the next 2 to 5 years?
Growth, really. Yeah. We're looking to actively grow both the HR, health and safety and insurance side of the business. And in terms of training and development, that is fundamental to our growth plans, if I'm completely honest. We believe in taking on apprentices with no experience. It doesn't worry us. A bit like what Hayley said earlier, we can do the training piece. It's about getting the right person that's so important to us. So in terms of apprenticeships, we'll continue to support them and bring people up through the business. And like I said earlier, even if we're not at the stage where we absolutely need that person in terms of a person on a seat, we're prepared to invest, because by the time they're at the level where they can handle business on their own, they'll be right there, and we'll need them then. So it's growth, and it's heavily weighted to training and development, Helston.
Oh, it's great to hear. I'm so glad I'll be in a job for the next few years until I retire. Just want to say to you both, though, that as a sector, we're working really closely in partnership through the local skills improvement plan that's driven by the chambers, and really bringing providers together and other agencies together to try to make this landscape, this kind of, and it is fragmented, and we're trying to bring it together so it's an easier message for young people who want to get into the skills system and employers who want to use the skills system. So we are really working hard to collaborate and hide the wiring, really, that we all, and the bureaucracy that we all work within. And the bureaucracy is there for a reason, and that's taxpayers' money. We need to have that bureaucracy. But what we've got to do is make it easy for people to get information, and we need to continue to get those messages out. So I can promise you, we're working really, really hard on that. So I know we haven't got that long left, but I wanted to pick your brains a little bit on your kind of more general now HR practices, and particularly around recruiting. So can you give me an overview of your recruitment process? And I think we have touched on some of this, but if there's something else that you can think you haven't mentioned so far, when you're job posting to final candidates, what are you looking for in terms of cultural fit? Have your strategies changed in terms of what you're looking for now, and the recruitment process that you go through?
Yeah, to a degree. So our recruitment process is pretty much the same. We advertise on quite a common platform. We obviously get an extraordinary amount of applicants that came through. Some of which are relevant, others are not so. So obviously that's a sifting process. And then we generally will invite them in to come and have a conversation with us. For us, it's usually around logistics. Can they get to where they need to be? If they're relying on public transport, is there public transport in that region for them to get to the jobs? And also, what is it that they're looking for? And we like to find it an opportunity to find out a little bit more about them as an individual. And it's, again, like I said before, it's about, what values does that person hold, because we can train them in how to do their job. And I think that's traditionally across all areas of the business. We look for the person that fits the role, and we'll make the training available to make sure that they're brilliant at it. And that, for the most part, works really, really well. I mean, you always get the odd one or two that don't quite fit the bill, but that's just the nature of recruitment. But yeah, predominantly we look at the individual.
Yeah. Same for you, Louise?
Yeah, I think touching on your point from earlier, I think gone are the days when you sit in an interview and you're interviewing the person in the hope that you offer them a job. They are absolutely just as much interviewing you now as you are interviewing them, and they'll think nothing of saying you're not the right fit for me. So I guess in terms of our recruitment strategy, we do recruit heavily at apprenticeship level because that's right for our business, and we believe in growing our own. But we do encourage people to go on social media and look at us, researchers, see who we are, because that is fundamentally so important to us, and that will give people a feel about what we stand for.
Yes.
And then hopefully by the time they come to the interview, they'll then know that we're the sort of organisation they want to work for. And we work hard to make ourselves stand out. So, looking at things like employee wellbeing by giving gym membership and, free on-site parking and stuff like that, they're only little things around the edge, but they're the things that build up and matter. So yeah, in terms of strategy, like I say, I think it's about making yourself stand out from the crowd, and that's what I always tell my clients. You're doing some amazing things, and you think nothing of going on social media and selling your company to clients, but social media is how you sell your business to that next recruit. And if I go on your social media, I should know you are a company I want to come and work for. Okay. So if you're doing something, celebrate it, because you're doing some amazing things. Shout about it, because that's so important.
Yeah, people get that feeling, don't they? I mean, I know when I've sort of researched companies, I get that feeling that I want to work with them. I get a feeling that I got to fit in, or I could bring something to the table. I think that there are a couple of other questions that I was going to ask you, but I think we've mentioned these as we're going along in terms of changes in HR practices and things like that. I think the bottom line is that we know that there's a changing requirement in terms of what people are looking for from an employer. That flexibility and that opportunity to train and develop seems to be really high up on the list. And it seems to be that if we can do that, then retention improves, or and I do think, though, that others look around and say, well, if they're investing in that apprentice or that employee, they're going to invest in me. So I do think it drives that motivation across an organisation. Just wanted to ask you there, because I'm going to have to come to a close. We could talk all day about me. Well, I could ask you loads of questions, and I might have to get you back, by the way. What are you most proud of, Hayley, in your career so far?
For me personally, I've been able to build an organisation that works without me needing to be there all the time. So I think that for me has been my biggest achievement to date. In sort of having a business that works without me, which gives me a lot of flexibility to go off and do other things, like the consultancy, like being involved with the chambers. I do a lot of voluntary work. I do a lot of, giving back. And so for me, I'm now able to sort of do a lot more of the things I enjoy, because I'm not bogged down with the sort of the day-to-day of running an organisation. So I think that's probably my biggest achievement so far.
If you had one piece of advice to give an organisation, what would it be?
To an organisation, I suppose stick to your strengths. I suppose that's more for business owners than the organisation itself. But I think making sure that you stick to what you're good at and bring other people in. And somebody once said something to me that was along the lines of, employ people who are better than you at doing certain areas of the job. I always used to think I was quite good at administration until I had a member join the team who absolutely blew me away and quite regularly pulls me up and says, this box has not been filled in, is he not? Goodness me, I've missed it again. But it's good because, that individual is absolutely exceptional at what they do. They're much better than me at that, and that's great. And I think it's remembering that, you can't be everything. And as an organisation, you're only as good as the people that you have in your team. And again, just employ people that are better at the job than
Why would you employ people that are exactly the same as you? Why? I mean, it would be quite scary for anybody to think that there would be 2 or 3 Nikki Joneses on there. I mean, that would just be horrendous. But you look for people with a skill set you've not got, people that are going to be better than you, because they're only going to make you look good anyway, aren't they, if they're better? So same with you, Louise. What are you most proud of, and what piece of advice would you give?
So I think I'm most proud of growing the business we have, and bringing the people through. But I think I'm really proud as well that I've been able to give back to the HR industry. So, I've been heavily involved in our local CIPD branch and championing that within our industry, because it is important that people know what's out there in terms of development. So I'm really proud that I can influence that next generation to want to go into HR and to want to get the qualifications. I think that's it.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I'm going to call it to a close now. I am sorry about that, because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, and it's been absolutely amazing today. Is there any kind of final points that you wanted to make, or have we covered everything?
I think it's just about understanding that as businesses we need to celebrate the skills that we have in our region, and really promoting those, because every piece of investment we make will benefit the business in the long term.
We're not great at shouting about it.
We're not great.
We're not really great at in the UK. We go, we're all right at it, but we're not as good as celebrating as others are that I see in other countries. It must be a UK thing, but certainly South Yorkshire don't celebrate what they've got enough. Definitely. Great advice.
I think that if you are a small business owner and you are struggling with a skills gap or a specific area, I think it's important to remember to reach out and ask for help.
Definitely.
Because there are so many organisations that have the advice and the guidance that you need actually to fill that gap in your business. And people are often afraid to ask for help. A lot of the people that I work with have struggled for a long time before they've actually reached out and asked for help. And I think that, as you said earlier, Louise, you don't know what you don't know. And if there is a skills gap in your organisation and you can't kind of figure out what that is or why you're struggling to fill that skills gap, ask the question. There's people out there that can help and that can advise and that might be able to identify why you've got a gap in that specific area of your business. And it's important to be open and be, vulnerable a little bit as well. Sometimes
it's tough, isn't it? When something's going not as well as you want it to go, or you don't have the answer, it is really tough to admit that. Because human beings sort of don't want to say that this is going wrong, or particularly, you put your life and put your heart and soul into it, particularly if you've set up a business. But the point is that I can guarantee you there'll be 10 others out there that are struggling with the same thing or have struggled and have come out the other side. So, great advice again, is there's somebody there that can help, even if it's just a bit of, shoulder to cry on and, I made this mistake and this is what I did and it helped, or I know somebody that can help.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So I want to say thank you so much. You've been absolutely wonderful. Thanks to our audience for joining us on this episode of Knowledge and Skills. We've heard some from exemplar businesses, and we've had our fantastic guests who shared their valuable knowledge, experience, and visions for the future. From discussions on good HR practices to insights into attracting people for key positions. Our guests have provided invaluable perspectives that will undoubtedly inspire and inform our listeners. I'm Nikki Jones. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next time for more enlightening discussions on the Knowledge and Skills Cast podcast. Until then, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge and Skills Cast. We hope that, like us, you found this to be a fascinating discussion filled with useful insights and intriguing ideas about where our region is heading next when it comes to skills. As we wrap up each episode, I'd like to encourage you to also get involved with the conversation and to join us in celebrating those businesses that are innovating in our region. Whether it's by networking, engaging with their services, or simply spreading the word about the remarkable work they do, your support fuels the positive change happening in South Yorkshire. Please subscribe and share from whichever platform you're listening from today, and get involved with your local Chamber of Commerce as we strive to support skills development here in South Yorkshire.